you have to do something educationally to make sure that you can be happy spending all day, every day, both making yourself happy and fulfilled, but also making someone else's life better. So I feel bad for patients. And honestly, that's where Peko MD started and why it started, because I got sick of seeing people on the insurance side of my practice coming in because of really bad outcomes. My brother, I remember very vividly saying, like, the pain now is for the rest of your life. Like, do this now, and then you'll be happy the rest of your life. Don't take the easy way out. So that, I mean, if I didn't have my brother and a variety of points in my life just to be inspirational, 100% I would have not been where I am.
This is Andy with Kripke Enterprises, and I am so excited today. This is probably like our 20th podcast, and I have an amazing guest today. But before we get to our guest, I just want to let you know this is Andy with Kripke Enterprises, and we are in the recycling business, and recycling is not only good for the environment, it is good for the whole world. So when you have a chance, recycle your metal at Kripke Enterprises. Today, I am lucky enough to have Dr. Peter Koltz of Peko MD. Dr. Koltz is a plastic surgeon, and he happens to be about 4 blocks down the street from us. And to be completely transparent, my wife also works there with him. So so I am somewhat familiar with your business, but thank you for being here, and thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. So before we get to talking about, enhancements and everything, when you were a kid, did you always want to be a plastic surgeon?
I would say I wanted to be a plastic surgeon earlier than most people decide what they want to do in medicine. I went to St. John's Jesuit, which is a local high school, and to graduate from high school, you have to do what they call a senior project. And for that, you have to choose a career that you think you might want to do. And I shadowed a plastic surgery group here in town and a couple other fields of medicine because I knew I wanted to be a doctor.
Did you know you wanted to be a doctor when you were 8 years old?
No. If I backed up a little further than that, I would say my entrepreneurial roots were quite strong.
Okay.
So backing up a little bit further from high school, your wife told me to share a couple little stories about my entrepreneurial past, if you want to start there. So back before the eBay days, a friend of mine and I would I was really into outdoor activities and skiing, mountain biking, just hiking outside. And so I had a passion for outdoor apparel and equipment. And my friend of mine and I would source equipment, clothing mostly, but some outdoor equipment.
Does source mean steal, or does source mean like?
I didn't steal anything, but I don't know. But to be honest, we sourced it because I don't know where it came from a lot of times. Okay. I'll get to another story in a second, but we sourced it and we acted as drop shippers from the sources that we found to a variety of customers across the country. And we made a fair bit of money, probably an uncomfortable amount of money for 7th and 8th grade kids. My friend was very good with internet. He just in kind of the boom of websites and the internet, he was very good at setting up websites. And so I sourced the materials. He set up a website pre-eBay, and ultimately we kind of transitioned our business onto eBay. And then we realized that we probably should have been paying taxes on some of this money because it became to a lot of money, and then we stopped doing it because we didn't know any of that stuff, and our parents didn't really know anything we were doing either because none of the product came to our house.
So when you say you sourced it, I mean you really like places outside of the country, or
no, it was all domestic.
So like stores or.
So basically what I did is I made friends in a variety of different ways with people that worked at different places. So
Gotcha.
Think like North Face was brand new then.
Okay.
Arc'teryx, all these outdoor apparel companies. And so I made friends with people that work there. They got this stuff at very, very steep discounts.
Right.
And so I would then turn around and sell it. And then the sources there would ship it to the places that we sold to.
Oh man.
So it was early before some of these companies were developed.
Okay.
And then another friend of mine who is probably more entrepreneurial than I, he and I started sourcing clothing back when like trendy jeans were just starting to be really on brand. We were sourcing that stuff from China and then reselling them to people in our community because people didn't want to spend $150 for a pair of 7 jeans and all these like cool jean brands. So that was like, we were really early on, like 8th grade, 7th grade, early high school. And so that was my early upbringing. So no, I was not thinking plastic surgery at that time, but I definitely was thinking, you know, how do I be creative? How do I be on the cutting edge? And how do I not be like a slave to the system?
What'd you do with the money when you were that age?
Save it.
You saved that money?
Saved it, and we put it in a variety of other ventures we had going on. Another friend of mine and I, we went golf ball hunting all the time in the creeks in Brandywine, and we would, you know, I would buy carts and different things to like present our stuff on and sell it. It was, yeah, I mean,
you were a hustler.
Could go on. Yeah, I was a hustler. So doing whatever it took to keep myself busy. I'm not good at sitting still.
And did you save this money all the way to college or medical school or
college? Yeah, most of it ran out in college because once I actually had to focus on school, I didn't have time to do any of that kind of stuff. So it allowed me to pay for incidentals and stuff that I wanted to do.
How did you take your entrepreneur? How did you take the person that can't sit still and sit still enough to go through college and go through medical school? Because the story that you're describing sounds like someone that has to be on the move. So how did you get planted?
Ultimately, my parents had a very strong installation of the fact that like you have to do something educationally to make sure that you can be happy spending all day, every day, both making yourself happy and fulfilled, but also making someone else's life better. And I couldn't make that connection in business personally. Like one of the classic interview questions in medical school is, what would you do if you don't get into medical school? I mean, I was a good student. I wasn't the greatest student coming out of college, but definitely strong enough to get into a couple of medical schools. But to my answer to that question was always, I was either going to be a farmer or I was going to be a doctor. And so farmers to me, like I could sustain myself, my family, I could provide food for other people, or I was going to be a teacher, which a doctor in Latin is really a teacher. So I was going to be able to deal with healthcare, going to be able to teach other people, or if I couldn't get in, I'd just farm. And so to me, it's like trying to figure out the most important things, essential functions in life. And it was one of those two paths. The problem was in medicine, there was nothing that like would hold my attention for a long period of time because, you know, the best thing about plastic surgery is it's head to toe, every body part, so many different topics. So it fits my personality really well. And I could never do the same thing every day. So to your point about like, how would I just focus around doing one thing in a busybody? Like, I mean, Gammy, and I think anyone you talk to in my office would tell you that I go lots of different directions really fast, and that's what keeps me excited and doing what I'm doing.
Wow, that is so. Even I'm not obviously in medicine, thank God. So even a general surgeon, are you saying that maybe general surgeons end up falling into categories of just this and that? They're not as general as it might sound.
General surgery, unfortunately, because that sounded like a good idea to me when I kind of got more into medical school. Maybe a general surgeon did lots of stuff. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, most surgeons are very specialized into these subspecialties of plastic surgery, neurosurgery, ENT, and it narrows you. But as a plastic surgeon, it still affords you an incredible breadth of types of cases to do and body parts to work on, age groups to work on, and it's just different every day.
And where did you go to medical school?
Medical school, I was here in Toledo at University. It was Medical College of Ohio, and then by the time I graduated, it was University of Toledo College of Medicine.
And when you become a plastic surgeon, do you leave college? Do you leave medical school a plastic surgeon, or is that like a graduate school of a graduate school? How does that work?
Yeah, so when you decide in medical school what type of doctor to be or you want to be, you have to start seeking relationships in medical school with kind of mentors, especially in the competitive subspecialties. So you decide kind of in your second, third year of medical school what you want to do, and then You seek out opportunities to make yourself stronger and look good to those specialties. And then you do what we call away rotations, where you go spend time at other institutions to make sure that's what you want to do, but more so try to make it apparent that you fit into that specialty to those people, so they recommend you into that specialty. Then you enter in your 4th year into something called the match process. So basically a computer system, you enter all the places in your specialty that you want to go to, and the institutions turn around and say, of all the people I interview, I want all the people that interviewed in this order. So they rank us, we rank them, and then a computer system decides where you go. So my wife and I were both in medical school at the same time. We both ended up through what's called the match process, and a couples match in Rochester, New York. And so it's there where I started in plastic surgery right out of medical school. But there are different routes to get to plastic surgery. You can do general surgery residency first. That's kind of the traditional old school way to do it. And then you go into a plastic surgery residency after that. Now the majority of plastic surgeons come out of medical school, match into plastic surgery, but it's the most competitive specialty or most competitive thing to do out of medical school, because a lot of people want to do it. And there's very few spots. There's only about 150 spots every year for people in the country to go into plastic surgery. There was about 120 when I started, or when I did my match. And that's compared to like neurosurgery or other things that people think are competitive. It's close to 400. There's just more spots, and those are competitive specialties. But general surgery, there might be 600, 700, 800, 900 spots. So.
Wow, that's very cool. Yeah. So you and your wife are both placed somewhere, and I mean, my kids watch Grey's Anatomy a lot, so maybe that's in my, and my wife was a nurse. You guys both had to be working. From what I've learned, doctors work their first couple of years. Was it 60, 80? How many hours a week do doctors work? And how did you two even have a life together? I would figure you'd be exhausted all the time. Well,
so unfortunately, my wife and I were married unfortunately, when we were married in medical school, because we didn't have time, we still haven't been on a honeymoon. So it never really stops. Wait,
you currently?
We've been married almost 20 years, and I still haven't been on a honeymoon. I promised her we'd go to Ireland at some point. That's what she wants to do, but cool. We haven't found time to do that yet. So what happens is, in residency, you're technically only allowed to work 80 hours a week.
Okay.
And at least in the surgical disciplines, you push and exceed that every week. And then you go into so after residency, I went into what's called a fellowship in microvascular surgery. It's the same thing. Which is what? Microvascular surgery is when you take tissue from one part of your body and you move it to another part of your body to restore form and function, usually from a traumatic or a cancer defect. So the most common application is something called free flap breast reconstruction. So women who have mastectomies, they have their breast removed, and you make a new breast out of usually abdomen, so stuff you would throw away in a tummy tuck. That's the most common thing. But head and neck reconstruction from cancers, replants of extremities and fingers. That's what I specialized in after plastic surgery training. And that is a little more focused, so you don't work as many hours once you are in that training, and then your practice starts, and then it never really stops. You think that when the hours would cut down the further you get out. I think maybe at some point it'll be that way, but it really hasn't. So we still work that much.
And is she a doctor that's practicing too?
She's a pathologist. So those are the people that we take something off of somebody they tell us if it's benign or malignant. Is it cancer? Is it not? Or what's going on? And then we use that information to then make the diagnosis and treat the patients. So luckily her specialty is much more reasonable it's kind of more of a 9-to-5 type thing, and she's part-time. So it allows us to take care of our 4 kids.
That's a lot of kids. I know what that's like. So you're in medical school and you're in a fellowship. I have to imagine, just like an entrepreneur who gets into a new business, you're sort of in a new business then. You're a fellowship, you get paid, right?
You get paid all along, but it works out to be about $1.50 to $2 an hour.
All right. That's not very good.
No.
So at some point, you have to be exhausted. It sounds like you're probably on the broke train at $1.50 an hour. You have to say, do I really want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should be a farmer.
Yeah. It's farming looks pretty good sometimes, but and so to go to medical school, you incur a lot of debt. I graduated medical school with about $300,000 in debt. So it's not just you get paid very little. I mean, you're paying to learn, and then when you start working, you make very little. So none of it makes sense financially. So the common thinking that doctors make all this money, like you have the opportunity costs that you've missed out on this whole time. So you have to not only pay back your debt, you also, all of my friends were starting right out of college, not incurring more debt. They're working and making reasonable salaries.
But they were probably working for somebody else.
Yep.
And they were getting a salary, unlike an entrepreneur who maybe when they are young would take on debt to open a store, to buy a piece of equipment, and have that. So was there ever a time you have this mounting debt, the light at the end of the tunnel had to seem very far, because I know when I've worked 80 hours in a week, I can't even think straight. Did you ever say, maybe this is...
Yes. So when I was a third-year medical student, so I played lacrosse in college at Indiana, and then I coached when I came back to medical school. Again, school wasn't quite grabbing my attention enough for me to do that full time. So I coached lacrosse at St. John's as like a get out of the house, and I love it. I mean, I love lacrosse. I still coach, and are they
going to states now?
They are, yeah. Which I don't coach St. John's now. I coach my son at Perrysburg.
Okay.
I loved coaching lacrosse, and I remember calling my brother very distinctively, who's a neurosurgeon now. He went to medical school at the University of Toledo, and then he went on to Baltimore, and then now he's in Austin, Texas.
Wow.
I said to him, like, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. Like, I don't enjoy going to medical school. All I want to do is plastic surgery. And like, is it really worth it? Because I would be happy getting up every day and just going to coach.
Right.
And my brother, I remember very vividly saying, like, the pain now is for the rest of your life. Like, do this now, and then you'll be happy the rest of your life. Don't take the easy way out. So if I didn't have my brother and a variety of points in my life just to be inspirational, 100% I would have not been where I am. And my parents the same way. So you definitely need someone to kind of kick you in the rear end every once in a while when your thinking gets a little crazy.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. And when the chips are down and you're deep in the weeds, and someone who is not, and maybe who's gotten through the trouble or the tunnel and gotten to the other side, that's great. And I mean, that is the 100% entrepreneurial story.
Yeah.
That pay your dues, and hopefully, if everything works out, you'll do well. Has that shaped how you have a philosophy for what you do now?
It's funny. So all of that stuff we have been talking about is really the ramp up before I even get to be a plastic surgeon. Never when I became a plastic surgeon was my plan to run my own business or be an entrepreneur, or at least I never admitted it to myself if it was. I left Toledo to do plastic surgery thinking I was never going to come back here, because in my mind, even though I didn't say it out loud, I was too good to be here. I would be in some big city doing craniofacial reconstructions because that's what I wanted to do. Cleft lips and palates, traumatic deformities of the head and neck. That was what my goal was. And then when I got to that point, and I remember very vividly sitting I did my fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and looking down the hallway each way, and there were 7 people that did, which doesn't sound like a big number, but in surgeon world, and when you're in a subspecialty, that's a lot of people that do the exact same thing that you do. And I didn't want to be like one of 7 people kind of being the end of the line at an academic institution, getting whatever comes through. And my community where I grew up, Toledo, had nobody. And so why would I be waiting in line in a community of people that I really don't care about them, but like I have no ties, no connection to them, as rather than going back to where I grew up. And I feel like I do have a debt of gratitude to pay. Right. And I could offer something that they didn't have at their fingertips. And I knew the types of things being done here because I went to medical school here. I knew the people that were kind of practicing here. And it's no disrespect, but like our trainings were very different. So if I can offer something to the community, I came back here to be in a small town community working in kind of a hospital-based practice. I joined St. Luke's Hospital, which unfortunately is no longer around, but and then transitioned to ProMedica. And that transition's been like, I couldn't ask for anything better, because meaning ProMedica has allowed me to practice in a system-based practice, which gives you all of the complex reconstructive type cases, but they've also given me the liberty to do the things that they admittedly are not experts at, which is kind of the entrepreneurial, retail-based medicine. And it's not that I'm an expert either, but they've let me at least explore that side. So my private practice, which is Peko MD, is the ability to do what I want in the retail-based practice, as long as I continue to stay dedicated to my reconstructive practice and the community for all the things that really is why I got into plastic surgery and still love to this day.
So I know that you explained it, but could you explain a little bit like how being a doctor in a community is with a hospital? So is that, or with a, you hear that the doctor is a private practice, but then he's connected. Like how do all of those pieces sort of fit together for typical doctors? And I do understand, so now is this like a side business where you're doing these things, or I get it because I'm sort of familiar with it, but I don't think I could chart it if I had to.
So it's what I do is not typical. So I hate to like give the impression that anything that I do is typical, but the way it works for most doctors, because most doctors don't do retail-based or cash-based medicine or surgery.
And so that is typical plastic surgery, yes or no?
No, so plastic surgery is people think of it as cosmetic surgery.
Right.
Plastic surgery is not just cosmetic surgery. Cosmetic surgery is about a fourth of the discipline of plastic surgery. So it comes in the flavor of craniofacial surgery, which is head and neck surgery,
right.
hand surgery,
right.
Microvascular surgery, or aesthetic surgery, cosmetic surgery.
Okay.
So those four parts make up the general field of plastic surgery. The only part of that that's cash-based, is retail-based, is cosmetic surgery.
So when you say cash-based, you mean like non-insurance?
No insurance.
Meaning that you don't necessarily need to do it. You could live your life without doing it. You just might not be comfortable doing it.
On the patient side, the patient doesn't need it, they want it.
Right.
And now how you define a need and a want, sure. I don't get to do that.
Right.
But insurance companies do, because they're paying the bills. So if somebody wants something and insurance companies say no, or what they cover is not what the patient wants, the patient has the ability to choose what they want, as long as they can find a doctor who can safely and effectively offer that treatment.
Right.
So that's the cosmetic side of plastic surgery. The things that dominate that space are, cosmetic breast surgery, cosmetic facial surgery, hair transplant surgery, skin rejuvenation type stuff, liposuction,
right?
That kind of stuff is the cosmetic space. Skin care is not covered by anything you don't need to prevent you from getting sick or to take an illness and stop it, is the stuff that insurance companies don't cover.
Right.
So that's what we offer basically it might as well be an ice cream shop on functioning on half of my office. It has nothing to do with anything insurance based.
Got it. So. And that's what you call cash based.
That's what I call cash based.
So you have and cash based sounds a little too non-insurance
based. Yeah. Because there are certainly most people don't pay cash for things.
And so do other surgeons, whether they are general or whatever, or the guy that fixes your Achilles, or
orthopedic surgeon,
an orthopedic surgeon,
podiatrist, yeah.
Do they have? Is that a private practice or
not? I mean, so private practice just means that you don't work for a big health system. You can be a private practitioner and still take and process through insurance.
Got it.
So the only private practices have kind of died, unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on how you look at it, because private practitioners can't afford to keep their lights on with the contracts that are negotiated with insurance companies, because insurance companies want to negotiate with big systems, because big systems can cover large amounts of their insured population.
Okay.
And so when me as a solo practice insurance surgeon goes to an insurance company and says, this rate you're paying me for this Achilles repair is garbage, they say, well, sorry.
Right.
And when a health system goes and says, you have to pay me more, or I'm not allowing my patients to come to you, then that's a different conversation.
Okay.
So private practitioners still exist. In this market, they almost have become non-existent.
Okay.
There's the Toledo Clinic, which is a group of private practitioners that have organized into a group. Otherwise, most people are employed by health systems, and the health system then goes and negotiates contracts with insurance companies to pay them what they think they need to be paid.
Got it.
But when the health system gets paid, they get paid based on a facility. So like a hospital gets paid for the use of their hospital, then they also get paid professional fees, which is for the doctor that's providing that service. And so the health system collects all that money, and then the health system divvies out that money to whoever needs to go to. So in the private practice world, 100% of it comes in the door if you're insurance based, and then you have to pay your lights, pay your nurses, all the bills that come in. And it's just a challenge to do that anymore with the rates that insurances pay for the services we provide, because most of the reimbursement is on the facility side.
Right.
So they pay hospitals really well to keep hospitals open and keep nurses in the room, but they don't pay the physicians that well on the professional side. So it encourages you to go work for a hospital, which has its benefits. And so when I talk about my private practice, for me, that I'm just speaking of the retail cash-based non-insurance practice. Okay. That's all the elective stuff.
So before you were on Central, how long after college and medical school, did you work for solely a hospital, or did you immediately have a non-insurance business?
So when I came out of my fellowship in Philadelphia, I first took a job actually in Philadelphia area, and I signed a contract to work for a health system in the kind of Lehigh Valley area. With the intent of, I basically did that because I didn't want to move. With four kids, I was leaving residency, moving to fellowship in Philadelphia, and then I was gonna have to turn around again and move again. I wanted to just move once and be done with it. I wanted to be settled, so I took a job after my third or fourth year in residency. I still was there another couple years, went to Philadelphia, did my fellowship there, and then my intent was just stay there and take my big boy job there.
Right.
Like I said, I was looking down the hallway and I did not want to stay there. It didn't make sense for me to stay. So I moved back to Toledo, joined St. Luke's. I stayed with St. Luke's for about 4 years, and I left when my contract was up because the hospital wasn't really in financial trouble that everyone knew about yet, but it was more so that I had to decide my next kind of long-term agreement, and I knew that the hospital system I was at was not going to allow me to do what I'm doing at Peko MD. They wanted me to be all in or all out, and I can't, for the reasons I said, do the insurance-based reconstructive practice in private practice. So I had to partner with a health system. Otherwise, I would have to lose that part of my practice, and I didn't want to.
Right.
So
because you enjoy,
because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. And otherwise, I'd still be in Philadelphia and in New York, and I would live there. I do what I do every day because I enjoy doing complex reconstructive plastic surgery, and it gives me the ability to, it's almost like I said, run an ice cream shop next door where I really enjoy doing that stuff too, but it's just different, and different in a good way in some ways, and different really good ways and really bad ways. I mean, it's just different. But I do all the things I do, it's a joke around our office, but the joke around me is when I'm given a choice, I take both. Like I can do both. So why don't I just do both? I can do my reconstructive stuff. I can do my cosmetic stuff. and everyone's happy on both sides, and I'm happy. So that's how
it's like when you were in medical school and you were a coach of lacrosse coach.
That's right.
Which you don't hear people saying that they do those types of things. So now you open up Peko MD on Central Avenue, and you have to, now it's even your private part of that, it's your own business, and you don't have an administrator there looking over your shoulder. So you have your staff, and then you have the other side, which is the more traditional non-insurance based stuff. So now you have to share with everyone, sort of, because you're in charge, you have to share with everyone your philosophies on patient care and surgical outcomes. What are those, and what did you share when you first got there, and are they different today?
So this is kind of an unpopular opinion, I think, in general, but in our space, in the aesthetic space anyway, and at least kind of starting there, because I think a lot of the interesting entrepreneurial type of things, and for the intent of this podcast, really what we're talking about is being an entrepreneur, and as an employed plastic surgeon, I don't do that. I'm not an entrepreneur in that part of my life. I punch a clock just like anybody else. I have a set of nurses, which are fantastic, a PA who's fantastic, a front office staff that's fantastic, but I'm not their boss. ProMedica is their boss, and which is that it takes an enormous amount of stress off of my shoulders, because on the other side of my office, I am that person, and it takes a lot. So, doing all of that kind of team building, culture building, letting people know why I'm doing what I'm doing was a challenge for me. And it's way more difficult than I ever expected, because my message, again, which is the unpopular opinion, is in the aesthetic space, there's a lot of people doing what they should not be doing. And
which people? Doctors or
providers? Call it providers. Doctors, yes. Nurse practitioners.
And the people too that come in there, aren't they doing some things they shouldn't be doing?
Only because they're not educated, right?
Okay.
So people want what they want. It's not their fault. Right. They see stuff on TV, and they read stuff. They heard their friend, and maybe they misunderstood something.
Right.
Regardless, it's not the patient's fault for being misled a lot of the time. So I feel bad for patients. And honestly, that's where Peko MD started, and why it started, because I got sick of seeing people on the insurance side of my practice coming in because of really bad outcomes. And maybe not such bad outcomes, but also like reasonable outcomes, not harmful outcomes, but just they paid their life savings for something that did not result in what they were told.
What do you, be more specific?
So, I mean, the most common example is an overweight person comes into the office and they just spent $10,000 on cool sculpting at a medical spa down the road. And that person never would have got a result that they could have been happy with for the amount of money they were spending.
Right.
And that was a common story. Or they saw somebody for a liposuction procedure and didn't know that the person that was providing that service was a radiologist. They weren't a surgeon or a plastic surgeon. They, had, the examples literally are
So are you
endless.
saying that, for lack of a better word, you're seeing botched up stuff that you are now fixing? Is that what you're describing?
So botched can happen, right? So that's poor surgical outcomes. More so, what was disappointing to me was,
I told you the phones might be ringing. That's a good sign.
That's good. That means business is good. So the more troubling part to me was the amount of people, which is more common, that were being told that doing X, Y, or Z was going to result in meeting that patient's goals. Okay. And again, it's cash-based stuff. The Peko MD existed or was formed and exists today because I am an honest person. I have zero desire to lie to anybody. I always say I'm not a good business person, because if I was a better business person, I wouldn't offer all of the things I offer that don't make financial sense. I only offer them because I want patients to be able to get what they want. So hopefully it all comes around somehow, that like if you're going to come in, you're going to get an honest appraisal of something. But a lot of what I do is telling people either they don't need something, the thing that they were told they need is not necessary, or again, fixing things that were done or they already paid for and would have saved them thousands of dollars if we did it a different way. And it never sat well with me that my field, which I was proud and excited to go into, there was a bad rap around aesthetic, the cosmetic part of it. And just a little bit of a story. Again, I went into plastic surgery for the purpose of head and neck surgery, maxillofacial surgery, and I grew to not really like it just because I didn't really like operating inside the mouth. But to graduate residency in plastic surgery, we had to do something called the Chief Cosmetic Clinic, which means that for 6 months as the last year in your residency, you have to operate your own clinic. So you have to pretend like you're the boss, staff it, see all the patients by yourself, choose the cases you do the surgeries on your own. The patients pay some discounted rate. And then, doing that, my first patient that I saw was a woman who was widowed, never left the house. I think it was like 2.5, 3 years. And she just felt that she was an unattractive person. She felt like she aged a lot over her years. And she came in just for kind of facial rejuvenation stuff. I did a facelift on her, which is kind of like the, a cliche thing to do, but did a facelift on her. And in the 6 months after we did that surgery, she became a totally different person in a positive way. Like she was out dating again, and she said it changed her life. And looking at her from before and after, and we would love to look at those photos, it was transformative in the best way possible. And so the idea behind Peko MD, our slogan, which sounds terrible. I never thought I'd have a slogan, but it's really kind of a mantra. And to your point about how do you train your team about what you're doing, I caught myself over and over again from that moment until when I hung a shingle over here on Central Avenue. I caught myself saying all the time, when you look better, you feel better. And then ultimately what I care about is that you take that you're feeling better and you go out and live your life better. You do better. And then when you drive downtown Toledo, it's like you will do better in Toledo. Right. I didn't know when I moved back to Toledo, how am I going to do better in Toledo? I mean, I knew I was going to do what I was going to do, but how is that doing better in Toledo as compared to someone else? And how can I help Toledo do better? It's that, like the stuff that I do, not that I'm so special, nobody else could do it, but it wasn't really ever organized in a way that somebody was offering a comprehensive approach to all things in the aesthetic space and doing it in an honest fashion without real, ulterior motives, I guess, for a better term. And that's what makes me a bad businessman. And I think I could definitely do much better from just being leaner. I have a ton of staff. I do it for the patient experience. I don't do it to be wise from a business sense. And so I have a lot of lessons to learn. And so really the challenge for me is now, because we're so successful in doing what we're doing, how do I take it where we are now and scale it to other locations? And so that's a whole nother discussion, which I'm happy to have.
Oh, yeah, no, I plan on it. I plan on it. Sure. Yeah. Sure. So that is amazing. And I think that your slogan, I think that, because I have thought about your slogan, and knowing that it is true to you, that message is incredible. And when it makes sense and it is who you are, it's authentic and it's believable. And then, people can't buy into it. Yeah. When it's bullshit and it's just catchy, then they can't. Yeah. And so I think that story is awesome. I
can't do the hokey thing, like the rah-rah team building thing. Unfortunately, I expect my team and the people I surround myself with to understand that I am a normal, nice guy. I work really hard for everything I get, and I won't do anything that is dishonest. I won't do anything that is misleading. And my goal is always to do the best for people the best I can. And the only reason I care about that is, number one, I want to do that for myself because I'm an honest person, but I want to make sure that people do better in their life. Whoever I am really given the privilege to be trusted to take care of, I mean, shame on me if I abuse that responsibility, not just as a doctor, but like as a human. You can't abuse the trust that people give you, whether it's in business, in medicine, whatever it is. I would not be able to sleep with myself at night if that's how my day to day was.
Sure.
So.
Our number one core value is we do what we say. Mm-hmm. And sure, it's simple, and do better is simple, but right. That is us. Mm-hmm. And that's authentic about us, and we do everything we can to make sure we are constantly doing that. Yep. So it's when it's authentic and it's real, it oozes out of you.
Everyone would do better if they did what they say.
Yeah, you're right. That's great. So on the side of your business that is non-insurance, let's just talk about the fun plastic surgery stuff. So on the side of your business that's non-insurance, which is, the one surgery I don't understand is like a Brazilian butt lift. Is that what is that? And is that a trend, or is that still a thing? And do you do those? Is that, what even is it?
So Brazilian butt lift is kind of a catchy term for when you augment the buttock with your own fat. Okay. So if you see Brazilians on a beach, they're kind of known for having very athletic looking backsides, and relative to their frame, proportionately very large, or not very large, but proportionally larger backsides. So it became a Brazilian butt lift when, Kim Kardashian really popularized the very small waist to disproportionately large hips and buttock.
Okay.
So, so what it is you liposuction the body from somewhere else, usually the abdomen, back, waist, thighs sometimes, and you process that fat and then you inject it into the buttock. Now, it was a trend. It's not as trendy now as it used to be. It's still quite common because unfortunately, people aren't as athletic as they used to be, so their backsides lose muscular volume, and people want to look like they're athletic. So there is a lot of that, like, a lot of men that want that soccer butt look that's just like kind of a high, full butt, and men have flat butts that can't keep their jeans on. There's more of that than you think.
Okay.
And so
men are doing this.
Oh yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Probably almost as many, honestly, not quite as many in Northwest Ohio. Most of the people, unfortunately, there's a whole other topic, is medical tourism. Most people in Northwest Ohio don't even know that these types of things can be done safely outside of Miami and Puerto Rico and outside the country, which is crazy because that's where all the crazy stuff happens. But yes, I do it. If it's done safely, it's incredibly safe. All of the terror stories that you hear in plastic surgery, deaths specifically, it's the highest death rate in any procedure in plastic surgery, Brazilian butt lifts, because of fat injections and fat emboli. So when you inject fat into the buttock, there's veins that are like small hoses in your backside. And so if you inject fat into those hoses, because you're doing it the wrong way, and there's a very painstaking, very expensive process to do it the right way, there's never problems. So that's how we do it. We invested, I have my own surgery center, so I invested in all the equipment to be able to do a procedure like that, amongst others, safely, so you can have it done. And I want to be able to do what my patients need, only if I can do it safely. So we have all that.
Can you sit on a toilet after you get a Brazilian butt lift?
Yeah, you can. We don't want people to sit for about 2 to 3 weeks, so we give them a special pillow that they sit on.
That goes on the toilet?
For specifically the toilet, you have to be able to sit for that short period of time. We tell them not to read the whole newspaper on the toilet.
So you give them the pillow for the chair.
For any time else they're sitting, they either have. It depends on. We do tummy tucks with Brazilian butt lifts commonly, or other procedures. But if they just have a Brazilian butt lift, they get liposuction all the way around and fat transfer to the butt. Usually they're laying on their belly or they're standing around walking. They're not sitting on their butt at all.
And are there any trends, plastic surgery trends, other than Brazilian butt lift? Is there another trend happening right now?
Right now, I would say the biggest trend is to go smaller and perkier with breasts. So, there are certainly always the crazy West Coast large breast kind of seeking people, but most people are in the mindset of downsizing, becoming more athletic looking, tighter, smaller, not quite to the waif, 90s style, but more athletic, kind of that yoga body is what people, at least women are after.
So smaller, putting in them or taking it out, or both?
So both. Some people who have them already, they want them out, and they either want smaller and lifted, or just lifted with nothing. There's a big, I don't say big, but there's a trend over the last few years of something called breast implant illness. So there was kind of a scare around the idea of are breast implants safe or not. There's been countless research studies on that topic, which have shown that they are, and a lot of these illnesses are kind of like, and they're not completely accurate what's being portrayed. So a lot of people, just because of that, have said, they've served their purpose. I don't want them. There's still tons of people that still want breast implants. But with the advent of fat transfer, like Brazilian butt lifts, we also transfer fat to the breast for people that want breast enhancement without implants because of, either the scare with breast implant illness or just they don't want implants. So we do a lot of fat transfer to the breast. But generally, it's tighter, smaller, perkier, and
so that's the trend. Tighter, smaller, perkier
tends to be the trend, and then also a little bit more intense focus on skincare, so non-surgical things, and trying to get away with avoiding surgery, which I'm always in favor of if we can help them accomplish their goals.
Right, and so that I assume that Brazilian butt lifts and breast stuff and tummy tucks are obviously what maybe, or you said, what do men come in? What is like a common surgery for men? And does anything happen below the shorts in a man that, like what do men get done? Men want things that are very inconspicuous, have quick recoveries, and very limited incisions. So in general, and women tend to be okay with those things as long as they have support, right? So not that men are always supportive, but men are weak. Men are weak. Men couldn't have babies. No chance. That's very true. The world would be over if men had babies. Very, very true. So men typically are after things like liposuction. We have a very busy practice with diet modification and general wellness. So for weight loss things, and a lot of men, as their hormones change over time and diets aren't optimal and they're not lifting weights like they used to, they tend to get a fuller chest. So I would say one of our more common procedures for men is gynecomastia surgery, where kind of reduce the breast, get rid of fullness in the chest. Liposuction predominates though for men. So for a man, liposuction for a man, is that getting rid of the dad bod, or is that like a lot of men when they're over 50 or 60, they get almost sometimes it looks like a basketball. Are you taking that out? The beer belly look? Yes. So you can, it may be too scientific, but so when men store their fat differently than women, most men store their fat inside their belly. So that's not areas that we liposuction. So to an extent, that beer belly can get smaller with liposuction, but really that's a diet and exercise thing. And so again, that's when in my practice, we try to make sure that we treat people comprehensively. So we have a whole side of our practice that just does wellness, which is kind of diet and exercise counseling, hormone replacement therapy, peptide therapy, weight loss medications. And the only way that beer belly is going away is that. It's not surgery. The liposuction is great for stubborn areas that are resistant to weight loss or general debulking and shaping. But you can't get to intra-abdominal fat with a liposuction cannula. It only comes out with, stuff with weight loss efforts on the inside. So women, though, carry their weight more subcutaneously or under the skin. That's what we liposuction really completely and aggressively. So you can look at our pages. People look like different people afterwards in a good way. You can shrink them to tiny people because it's just a matter of, can you access that fat or not safely? Right. And if it's underneath the skin, right underneath the skin, yes. And if it's inside by your organs, although there's been some surgical mishaps that you read about in the paper with lots of people, unfortunately, luckily not in our practice, but you should not be liposuctioning inside the abdomen. Right. It's right underneath the skin. So I have to assume that when, I know some of these surgeries are quite expensive, and I have to assume that there's some type of technology that if you're a man or a woman, if you're a man with where your breasts are going to get reduced, or a woman whose breasts are going to get enlarged or reduced, you probably can take a picture, and whether it's through AI, make it look like what the outcome is going to be. Is that technology out there? Yeah, it's been around for years. There's a company called Canfield, which makes a kind of a 6-foot tall camera that takes full body photography. You can do simulated surgery. We actually threw our camera away because it became so, number one, it takes up a lot of space, but it's so inaccurate. That's what I wanted to know. But in a freaky way. Not that you can't make people look different ways, but sometimes it just didn't completely simulate
what needed to be simulated. So
Got it.
It worked really well for some things, but it took up so much space that it wasn't worth keeping around for the narrow applications that it had.
Okay.
There are kind of cooler technologies now that are iPad based, which are worth investing in if you need to. We haven't gone that way because we haven't needed to. I do think it probably at some point it's useful to have something like that around. Generally, what I have people do is show me pictures of their goals, and that I mean like a picture's worth 1,000 words. So they can't on those technologies themselves do a good job of simulating the different surgeries. So when someone shows me a picture of, Halle Berry or Jennifer Aniston, I know exactly what they want their breasts to look like. Right. I know what they're going for, and I see where they are now, and I know how to get them there. When they mess around on an iPad and they like make some parts bigger, some parts smaller, like that's not realistic, and so I don't even want them looking that way.
But when this has got to be the tough part of your job. Every woman, every woman who walks in says, I want my breasts to look like Halle Berry or Jennifer Aniston, but there is no way that their body, that's a whole package.
Well, yeah. So I mean, we have to be very specific about what we're talking about. We're not talking about their face. We're not talking about their abdomen. We're talking about their breasts. And so you clarify those things. But not everyone wants.
But even that is, Jennifer Aniston is also like 3 inches thin, and not every woman that comes into your place looks like that.
No, they all look like that.
Yeah. So it's, managing those expectations, even with showing them the goal, that has to be challenging.
It is.
And does it? I loved the story about how you changed someone's life, and I'm sure you have more stories of that than you have of the other, but also people. I know that when I'm at the doctor, people always say, especially with surgery, you should have someone else there because you don't always hear what they're saying. You start talking about cutting, and I get nervous. And some things can't, in the non-insurance side, some things probably don't always go as expected. Not the surgery was wrong, but the Jennifer Aniston breasts look like they may look like that. They just don't look like what I thought they would. How do you manage all of that?
Well, so this happened to me just last week. I had the first patient in my career leave my office upset because she came in, she had breast implants. She wanted them removed because they were 25 years old. She still wanted her breast implants. And she said, while I'm doing this, I don't mind going a little bit bigger. If you can go a little bit bigger, that'd be great. She showed me pictures of what a little bit bigger was. Totally reasonable. I did exactly that. We went up, 75 or 100 cc's or something, which, is a little bit bigger. And she was absolutely upset. Could not be more upset. Stormed out of my office. I didn't give her anything she wanted. They weren't nearly big enough. I don't know how to actually make, and I've never had that happen before. I don't know how to actually make someone like that, after hours of discussions, review of lots of photography. You're always going to have people like that clearly there's something missing with the connection. So either, she was being funny and I didn't quite get the joke, or I didn't ask the right question, or whatever it was. But I operate all the time. And that's one.
Right.
So that's never happened before. Generally, the things people are upset about are, my scar is a little bit too wide here, or my scar is a little bit higher here and a little bit lower here, or, I love my breasts, but I wish they were just a touch bigger. And my famous line in the office is, if you come to me, generally the way it goes is after surgery, if we're doing a breast enhancement procedure, they feel like their breasts are too big for about 3 weeks.
Right.
Then they're perfect for about a month to 2 months. And then at 3 months, they'll say they're perfect. They just wish they were a little bit larger. And so it's a progression. But if you are happy with your breasts, you just wish they were a little bit larger. People don't want more of a bad thing. To me, that's a compliment. If you want them, you're happy, but wish they were slightly larger.
Sure, always means you're wanting more. Right.
You don't want more of a bad thing. You want more of it's good. So I tell them that before surgery. You're going to love your breasts, but you're going to come to me at 3 months. You're going to say, I wish they were slightly larger. And if I made them too big, I've had one person tell me that, and it was because I listened to her husband with her breast choices, and she admitted that. She said, I didn't stop you from doing that, so that was on me for not saying I want these smaller. We gave her exactly what they asked for, and shame on me for asking both of their opinions. And if they agreed, I should have just asked her, and I've learned that lesson.
Right.
So I don't know, there's little lessons you live and learn along the way, but generally, people are really happy, and it's a really rewarding thing because there's far more life-changing positive
there
stories
has to be.
than those rare things. And unfortunately, and this is the part that bothers me, unfortunately, when a patient's upset, I have a whole team of staff that go above and beyond to make the patient's experience fantastic.
Right.
And I don't want to say it doesn't bother me when a patient's upset, but like I have a lot of people to see and make happy, so I move on. My staff don't do that. So
yeah,
they
you're
get
doing
upset.
everything you can do to everything within your power to do, you do. And it's just, hey, you're cutting on people's bodies. I mean, it happens. I am sure that the majority, I personally know the majority are much happier than sad.
But the staff gets crushed by those types of things because they take it personally.
Right.
And they don't know that, just in general, this kind of stuff happens with people.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough world.
That is a tough world. And it's, it is, so now your other side of the business is the non-insurance business. You are growing that to different cities. And that doesn't mean that you're doing the surgeries in those other cities. Tell me how that part works because of the hospital systems and everything.
So currently, we are only growing the Peko MD side of the practice to other locations, and
which is the non-insurance
the
side.
non-insurance side.
Okay.
Whether or not that changes in the future, I don't know. But right now, I have control over that side, so I can do whatever I want.
Okay.
So the mission's the same, to help people in different towns do exactly the reason that I started doing what I'm doing here, do the same thing there. So when I know people all across the country, my path from residency to today was really more of an academic kind of know people in big institutions type of path. And so I've made a lot of connections with very, very strong surgeons, very great thought leaders in the field. And these people have seen what we're doing and said, we want to do that, but we don't know how to do that.
Right.
So they've partnered with us in these other towns to open or run our business in their town with the same mentality, with the same goals, and ultimately they want to do what we're doing. So I am not planning on being down there for any of these other locations for a significant amount of time because the surgeons there are as capable or more capable in a lot of senses than I am. I can offer them some surgical help. I can offer them some practical business development help. And that's about it. I mean, it's not anything more than we're very proud of what we've done here. Patients have been very happy with what we've done here, and the model for what we're doing is not typical in the sense that we are able to be comprehensive in our care and are valuing that we want to offer patients only what they need and nothing more, and not really make it a business first type of interaction with the patients. And I think the message is ultimately the do better message. It's like, we're not doing this to give patients what they want, like, because they come in for Botox. We don't give them Botox. We give them whatever it is to meet their goal, which may be, I want to look more rested, which isn't Botox. Maybe it's using the right skincare, or I want to get rid of my abdomen. I saw a patient today that was seen by one of these chain liposuction places, and they were going to have in-office liposuction and like awake liposuction and an awake tummy tuck, which would have absolutely disfigured this woman. And so we came up with a totally different surgical plan. I saw another patient who's seen at a similar place based out of Detroit, and he had a massive hernia on his belly. And he came to me for a second opinion after being told he was going to have liposuction. He absolutely would have had his bowels skewered during that procedure. And that's the part we want to protect people from, and so that's what we're doing in the other cities.
That's great. And you're an entrepreneur, and you need to stay busy, and you've built the model, and not every other surgeon probably is that and has the time to build the model or the energy. And, as you said earlier, that give me 2 jobs and I'll pick them both. So for you to be able to plunk that down in another city and get a surgeon up to 80% ready to go, it's like a gift for them.
I don't mean to oversimplify it, because I definitely didn't do it the right way in the beginning. My thought was, I have a surgeon in a town. I know what I'm doing where I am. Go.
Right.
And it doesn't work like that. And I've learned that, unfortunately, the hard way, because we've hired and fired or lost some people that really derailed us along the way. And luckily, we have a core of people that have shown me my weaknesses, which are I'm not organized. Like, I mean, you can tell by the fact that I like to take on lots of things at the same time. Like, I'm organized in the operating room. I know exactly what I'm doing in the operating room. I'm not a business person. I know what my goal is and how I get there. Like, I may get there one way, but it's probably not the smartest way, not the most efficient way, not the most business savvy way. And luckily, I've hired a COO for my business, and an accountant for my business, and a legal team for my business, and a manager of my OR for my business that says, all right, like, Dr. Koltz, you have all this in your head. We need to put this into a system that is lift and loadable to another location. And had I not had people around me telling me to do that, I probably wouldn't have done that, and we probably wouldn't be successful growing the way that we need to grow the right way. There would have been more bumps along the road. So it's not a perfect thing, but I think we're learning as we go, and I think ultimately the message is the same and appropriate, and we're getting there. Well,
I hope that you saw the podcast with John Frankel, because he's doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yep.
So in the dental field, and creating he claims it's not a DSO, although it is a dental service organization. But it sounds like that's the direction that you're going in with your business.
Yes, there's a couple different directions. We're trying to decide which direction we go, but where we end up, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, but patient care, as long as patient care is the number one priority, everything else will find its way.
You hope so.
Yeah, this has been really interesting. So that's the future. Mm-hmm. It sounds like you know what your goal is. In a perfect world, in how many locations do you think you'd like to have in the future?
17.
17?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you come up with that number?
It's my lucky number.
I love it. Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds good. And I am sure that you will do it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. This has been great.
It has been fun. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right.
That's it.